First time I actually saw the movie Rudy, I was traveling. I was doing play-by-play on University of Miami basketball. This was back in their early entrance into the Big East. The team wasn't very good. They were being coached by Leonard Hamilton. They had lost all of their Big East games, leading up to what was going to be another annihilation at the hands of the Yukon Huskies at the Gampel Pavilion. We leave the hotel, and it was going to be a little bit of a drive to get into the hinterlands there, the remote region of Connecticut, where the Gampel Pavilion, the home of the Huskies, was. And as we're weaving our way through the various traffic impediments, watching the movie Rudy, which Hamilton was hoping would inspire his team to reach great heights and maybe get their first ever Big East victory. And UConn had a hell of a team. This was back in the days when they had players like Rip Hamilton and Kevin Ollie and many, many other greats that competed for them during a big run there by Jimmy Calhoun. So little chance that the Hurricanes are going to win, even with the inspiration of the Rudy showing and viewing on the team bus. And I couldn't help myself. I did. I despise Notre Dame so much that, and I actually got the entire bus to chant, "He's offsides! He's offsides!" Kind of ruined the whole message that Hamilton was trying to impart on his team. I don't think I was one of his favorites after that. And sure enough, they got pounded that night. But that was my feeling about Notre Dame. And last night, I was kind of well, we recommended with a very slight lean yesterday. I'm not backing off or hedging on what we recommended that you play yesterday here on the show because I thought Penn State in there with a legitimate shot. You couldn't be suicidal if you were watching that game and you ended up on the losing end of a 3-point margin with the last second field goal being the deciding factor in the ball game. And maybe earlier in the game, I mean. Alarm is the root word of alarming, and there were some signs there that were wrought with disaster. As you were watching this guy, he appeared like he had the same helium ball filled syndrome that we saw with Sam Darnold in the Minnesota game, which would raise suspicions that maybe he was coming back to the pack. But Alar was overthrowing all of his wide open receivers early in the ball game. He had many opportunities. And then, of course, late in the ball game, inside the final minute, he makes the bonehead play of throwing a ball while drifting to his left across the field into the middle of the field to his right. Gets picked off and sets up Notre Dame for the game-winning touchdown. But and we'll get some pushback on this from the professor who's going to join us here in just a second. Because for some bizarre reason, and the reason I started with that story about how much I despise Notre Dame over the years, I mean, going all the way back to Newt Rockne, was that they seem to be somewhat likable this year. Is that possible, people? Can we change our opinion, do a 180 on the Fighting Irish and Notre Dame and actually try to root them in for the championship? Seems a little absurd. All right, if you're betting on Notre Dame, you were victorious last night, and hopefully you did it with Bet Online because they continue to be the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for all betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online, your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, the NHL, UFC. BetOnline, the number one sports betting source for the new year. From touchdowns to three-pointers and hat tricks, BetOnline has you covered on every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. I know, Professor, as we welcome the professor to the show, that you had more than a little bit of a rooting interest, I believe, in Penn State last night. Is that
I did.
And what were your feelings about the game? As I know earlier we spoke, and I said I was developing. I mean, just the smallest of affinity for the whole Notre Dame story.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because Riley Leonard's doing it for the love of the game, right? Because he left you for
That
four
was a good
million
one. That was
dollars.
very
Plus,
Lee Corso-esque, wasn't it? I
yeah,
mean, he's doing it for the love of the game.
yeah,
But
and $4 million.
hello, man. Well, I didn't mean it like that. I just like the way the kid. He's a competitor. When he was hurdling over defender in the
You know,
previous.
I honestly I love when people do this. When a guy sucks but yeah, he's got so much heart. He's got so much go.
Yeah.
He's terrible. He threw two horrible interceptions. Second one should have cost them the game. he's great at running up the middle on 3rd and 2. I think like we'll just admit America wants to root for this guy because America loves like weirdo, over religious, have
Yeah,
to show it on the field quarterbacks.
a
Like
little too much Jesus, in the references.
it's very Tebow esque. So I'm used to people wanting to cheer for the guy, but again, let's not pretend Riley Leonard won the freaking game for him. I mean, again, two terrible interceptions should have cost him the game. But a Penn State defensive back just fell down on the key play. Honestly, you're watching the live feed and they didn't show the guy falling down. So like, well, that has to be a busted coverage. And then they go to the replay. He didn't trip. He didn't fall down from contact. Just like the ball got snapped and he fell over backwards.
Yes.
Did he have a heart attack? Did he have a seizure? Like, what the hell is going on that this guy just fell down for no particular reason? Like,
And yet, that being
okay.
said, you have Penn State still in a perfect position to be the team as opposed to Notre Dame that got a last-second field goal to walk off and go to the championship.
Except Drew Aller decided to throw the interception that you scream at 8-year-olds if they throw that ball. If a guy's rolling left and throws back across his body into the middle in a Pee Wee League football game, don't ever do that.
Yeah.
And you don't feel bad about because that's the number one thing for a quarterback that you teach. It's the first lesson you teach a quarterback when he's 8 years old and taking snaps for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, you bench him and then you go and punch out his father after you get him.
I mean, honestly, again, you can blame Aller, and certainly he deserves it. But you also, I think, have to blame, James Franklin and Kolinicki, the offensive coordinator, for putting him in a position where that was even possible, where that was even a choice. In my personal opinion, that situation is a no-brainer situation. You have two options. You throw a 9 route and you just tell him, take 2 steps back, throw it as far as you can and see what happens, because even if it gets picked, it becomes a punt. Or you throw a screen pass. And those are the only two choices in that situation. You don't give Aller the option of making the horrible decision that he made. But, meanwhile, the announcers are going on about, well, this is a quarterback you can have complete faith in because the one thing he does is make great decisions. Okay, how'd that work out for you?
It was an amazing bonehead decision. You were implying that Penn State actually should be overjoyed, jubilant about the outcome because, in your opinion, Professor, they have the perfect head coach. As much as he has this choking dog label in big games, they're in a perfect situation to perpetuate what it is that they really like about.
I mean, when you look at Penn State football and you look at if any team ever had done something that deserved the death penalty, it's Penn State football.
Yeah.
I would argue that, in terms of karmic justice, James Franklin is the perfect selection because he's relatively young. He's only like 51 or 52 years old. So he might be there another 15 or 20 years.
Yep.
He is just successful enough that you are never going to have a good excuse to fire him. He's never going to throw up like that 3-8 or 4-7 season where you're like, yeah, no, he's good enough recruiter. He's good enough talent evaluator that's never going to happen. He's going to make the playoffs every 3 or 4 years because of the condition of the Big Ten. It's always going to be like in the mix for the third or so best Big Ten team. And he's never, ever going to win a national championship ever, particularly in this format where you have to win 3 or 4 big games in a row because he's just not capable of winning that many big games in a row. So, in a sense, in that you get to spend the next couple of decades banging your head against the wall over a coach who's not bad enough to ever fire, but not good enough to ever win a title. That's perfect justice for Penn State football when you think about it. In the big picture, like coming off the Joe Pa era and everything that happened there, and everything we learned about what Penn State football was really all about, arguably they deserve to spend the next 20 plus years in limbo, which is exactly where James Franklin is leading them.
It's cliche to say this, it seems, but you hear this kind of reference often when you have what looks like the matchup in a semifinal situation or an earlier playoff series that will ultimately produce the champion and the eventual winner. And many people feel that way about Ohio State and Texas tonight, that the winner of this game will
Yes,
be the champion. What chance would you give Notre Dame against either of those teams, and who would they have a better chance to defeat from a matchup standpoint?
interesting question. Because your default answer there would be for everybody Ohio State.
Yeah,
But I actually think when you look at Ohio State and you look at Ryan Day, when he gets into these, he did it a year and a half ago against Notre Dame. When he gets into these matchups where he has an option to sort of play wide open and high flying football, but he can also, I'm a tough guy. I'm Woody Hayes.
yeah.
He tends to want to go for like, I'm going to outman you, even though that's, whereas Sark's going to be Sark no matter who he's playing. And I think stylistically, that would be a less fortunate matchup for Notre Dame, because I think Notre Dame would have problems covering Texas's receivers there, whereas Ryan Day might take his own receivers out of the game. In terms of talent, it's clearly they'd have a better shot against Texas. But in terms of, you get into coaching, you get into mentality, they might actually have a better shot against Ohio State, because you might get that, like, Ryan Day reverts to his worst instincts game and, play a slow down game where he lets teams stay in it. So I don't really have the answer to that one. But my first instinct would be Notre Dame might actually be better off playing Ohio State than they would. Honestly, it's the same thing we've been talking about for Ohio State for a couple of weeks. Who's going to do the game plan? It's going to be a Ryan Day game plan. It's going to be a Chip Kelly game plan. It's going to be a Chip Kelly game plan. Ohio State's going to win by 7 touchdowns. If it's Ryan Day game plan, it might be like 20-20 with 3 minutes left, and it's whoever has the ball.
Self-sabotage being one of the
I mean,
coaching.
it's what he's done over and over again throughout
Sure.
it. Again, including against Notre Dame last year in the first game of the week. Now, Ohio State won the game, but it was a game where Ohio State should have gone in. And again, Ryan Day's got this thing. He recruits for high-flying offenses. He takes transfers for high-flying offenses, and then he gets into some games and he wants to be Woody fucking Hayes and run the ball up the middle 47 times, no matter how many times he's unsuccessful. So in that scenario, maybe I honestly don't give Notre Dame much of a chance against either of these teams.
All right.
I don't think they have the offense to compete against either. I think tonight is essentially the national title game.
So tonight, being the title game, Ohio State, I'm sensing that you almost feel like you went to the deli counter getting 6 points in this game with Texas. And after ordering a half a pound of roast beef, they actually packed you up like 2 pounds, and the scale just went like this, and then it's weighted pretty heavily towards the idea that this will be a closer game than people think. Is that the way you're viewing Texas and Ohio State? Because I've been looking at Texas very lackluster play in certain spots in the late going of the regular season and the postseason. And Ohio State, I mean, all of a sudden, they did flip a switch. Right? Maybe Ryan Day said, "Hey, listen, Chip, it's your ball game, baby."
No, I think that's exactly what happened. Is that at some point late in the season, Ryan Day realized, I'm paying Chip Kelly $3.5 million to be my offensive coordinator. Maybe I should let him game plan. Maybe I should let him be the offensive coordinator. And has had wild success from it. Now, again, the problem with Ryan Day is we don't know when that part of his brain that just prove how tough you are, prove how Midwestern Ohio State is going to click in at any moment. He's going to get on the headset and Chip, start running the ball up the middle. That's all we need to do. 3 yards in a cloud of dust, baby. As far as Texas, again, I sort of, when I look at Texas, throw the 2 Georgia games out. It's just an unfortunate bad matchup for them. I don't think Ohio State will be able to do the same things along the defensive line that Georgia has done, because the talent level just isn't the same between Georgia and Ohio State on the defensive line. I do think that this game is too many points. I lean a little bit to Texas, but my main focus here in this game is on the over, sitting at under,
I think it was
53 and a half.
53 and a hook, something like that.
I took it at 53 and a hook. We will see what it is right now, see if it has moved up at all. Let's look really quickly. It's still sitting at 53 and a half.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to see a lot of stops in this game. I think both offenses will be able not just to score, but to go up and down the field with some big plays. In terms of the side, again, I lean a little bit. I think Texas over the last couple of years has actually been very good in the big spots. Again, other than the two Georgia games. Overall, I think Texas' performance in big games has been good the last couple of years, particularly their offense. Even when they lost in the playoffs last year, it was against Washington in a shootout. It wasn't like Washington shut them down or anything. I look for I don't know, maybe 42 and it's like 21-20, something like that in the first half. I think this game's going over. That would be the side if you made me play it, I would 100% take. But in terms of the points, yeah, I lean a little bit towards the Longhorns here. I can't sit here and justify it. But in the back of my brain, it's just chewing that this is too many points in this spot.
The kicker is going to have to take the gyroscope out of the ball for Texas also. I mean, that was a double doink job that he had in last week's game, and nearly cost him a chance to be in this particular spot. All right, so that's tonight, Ohio State and Texas. Professor, slight lean towards taking the points and taking a shot with the over 53 and a hook in this game. Are you inclined at all, Professor? Because I know you're a very rational gambler, and you're not one of those guys like me that's going to go make a 16 parlay or whatever, trying to cash a big ticket on a small
You
amount.
and everybody else on the planet.
Yeah. But are you inclined to get involved in any of these props? Because I think one of the most difficult ones, and I don't know that you're ever getting anywhere near like a reasonable price for coming up with the right answer here. I mean, there are certain spots where maybe you could have an inclination as to who is going to get the first touchdown in the game. But are you ever inclined to dive into that level of depravity when it comes to gambling, where you're taking like 5-1? You don't even know which team is going to score first.
As you know, I love to engage in that stuff in the Super Bowl because it's the last game of the year. But outside of that, no, I don't. Look, the props are not. There are people who specialize on them. Who, again, when you're dealing with online people, always tread very cautiously. But there are some people online who seem to be relatively successful with the prop stuff. I don't pretend. It's not my background. I don't have any expertise. I honestly, I feel like if I were going to touch that stuff, everybody'd get injured like 3 plays into the game.
Yeah, or be one of those guys like for Temple at whatever it was.
Yeah,
it's taking himself out of the ball game.
I'd be buried before the 12-minute mark. So again, I don't do it, but again, there are a lot of people who do. And yeah, once in a while, I want to pop up. You're like, that seems like a good price.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I saw one again, and I'm not endorsing this by any means. I saw an interesting one on the Monday night NFL playoff game, and the prop was both Justin Jefferson and Puka Nacua record at least 5 yards receiving in each quarter of the game. So in other words, both of them would have to have one catch more or less each quarter. And I was like, at the target rate that and it was a decent price. It was like 7 or 8 to 1 or something like that.
Okay.
And I was like, at the target rate those two get thrown at, which is historic, and the fact that they both have great hands, that one's interesting to me. I mean, I'm not going to play it, but it was just one that caught my eye.
Who comes up with that? Wow, that's really digging deep, as we say, into the.
Well, again, I think it's the last 8 or 10 weeks of the season, Puka's had a higher target rate than anybody in the NFL. They're throwing at him like 18 times a game or something like that. And Jefferson, for like the last 3 years, is like 12 plus targets a game. So I thought that one was an interesting one.
Yeah, Darnold is overthrowing Jefferson and all of his receivers so badly, though. I think at one point in the game, they got your buddy PC aroused because they invoked the infield fly rule on a couple of those passes. They were so far off target.
You know me, because I could not stand the man with the Miami Dolphins, there is nothing worse for me in terms of aggravation level than watching a Detroit Lions football game. Because if you want to call it, if you want to call it balls and daring and a new way to look at football, or you want to call it some sort of mental disability, and both are completely valid arguments when it
Yeah.
comes to Dan Campbell. On top of that, the luck that this man possesses
Yes.
is the most amazing factor I have ever seen. In like, you're watching that game and it's tied and it's like anything can happen, and Jared Goff fires one right into Van Ginkel's chest,
Yes.
which is going to be an obvious pick six, and Van Ginkel just drops the ball.
And he's great at that. I mean, reminiscent of Jason Taylor's interception of Rex Grossman when the Bears were undefeated and the Dolphins went into Chicago Soldier Field on a freezing day and knocked them off their undefeated perch. Where Grossman just throws the ball right into Taylor's hands.
It's 4th and 2, I think, basically on like the 5-yard line for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
And they have Jahmyr Gibbs run a fucking Texas route, which is like the slowest developing route the worst possible, and it works.
It works, of course.
I mean, again, and forgetting the going for it and the basics of it, the stuff they do in those situations, and it works time and time again. It's just freaking amazing to me. And again, you can say whatever you want about the whole Campbell era and Campbell philosophy, and there's certainly analytic arguments to be made on one side, and you just don't do this arguments to be made on the other. And I can't resolve it, but for me, for someone who grew up with a certain mentality and playing style of the sport of football, there is nothing. It's just constantly yanking my hair out. Like, how does he keep getting away with it? How does this work over and over again?
Yeah, at the worst of moments last year when he's in the NFC title game and he makes a couple of bonehead calls on.
And again, the Darnold thing is a great example. Darnold has been great all year long.
Yeah.
He gets into that game and he's like afraid to throw the football. Like he's sitting back there for 10 seconds, looking around. Dude, somebody's got to be open. Somebody's been open all year. Somebody's got to be open.
Jefferson wide open in that game on several occasions for what would have been scores. And
well, they had a couple on the goal line where Darnold took sacks or had negative plays, and then they went to the replay, and there's like a dude in the flat doing jumping jack saying, "I'm open."
It's like, here.
What throw me the goddamn ball. Like, and it seems to happen over and over again with the Detroit Lions this year. Something very voodoo and strange going on with that team.
They have lucked out. I mean, and proof then that Cro-Magnon man can coach in the NFL. Shades, a little bit of a shades, the look on the sidelines, not an exact facsimile as a facial resemblance, but you see a little Bill Cowher in the sneer of Dan Campbell, who was, of course, basically with the Dolphins and was running Oklahoma drills, where guys get dedicated to try and get his team fired up, and then he won a couple of ball games, but
and then
I would have anticipated this level of success in terms of victories.
Nobody rational.
Nobody in their right mind. All right, did want to touch on one thing, and I don't know if you can dig this up from an earlier program that we did where you were taking a look at the worst, dumbest things that were done in 2024 in the world of sports, and one of them really, caught my. Well, they all did. I mean, going all the way down to this is the year of stupid. The big year of stupid in 2024. I don't know if you can flash through a couple of these quickly here, Professor, because I did want to get to the one about dorks ruining gambling.
So number 5 was Blake Lively's $5,000 tracksuit at the Super Bowl. Number 4 was a Marlins giveaway that if you don't live in South Florida, you don't want to know about. Sum it up, say it's the stupidest giveaway of all time.
Yeah.
Number 3 is that creepy guy who holds the Stanley Cup with his child molester gloves everywhere he goes. Which that dude just freaks me out. And the one
and you had a classic tale there about the elbow room.
Again, for those who are unfamiliar with South Florida, where the players took the Stanley Cup the first night was a bar down on Fort Lauderdale Beach called the Elbow Room, which if you have never been there, is the most disgusting bar in the history. This is how disgusting, for those of you who don't live in South Florida, the Elbow Room is. Around the corner from the Elbow Room is a bar called Hunter's Beach Bar. Hunter's Beach Bar is owned and operated by the porn star who used to play the MILF Hunter on the internet for like 10 years. If you have been to both of these bars, somehow the Elbow Room is more disgusting
Yes.
than a bar that is owned by a porn star.
As
That's
we
really
said,
all I can tell you
it
about
smells
the
like
Elbow
a subway
Room.
car. You'd rather go to a bar in a New York.
There is still schmutz and dirt and disgusting things from spring break in 1985 still left in the Elbow Room.
They cleaned it up since they filmed.
It is the most disgusting bar I've ever been into. And this guy has to stand in the corner with his gloves watching people from the Elbow Room violate the cup for like 12 straight hours. Like, this guy has the worst job in the world. How this guy hasn't killed himself is beyond me.
Pretty creepy. I mean, you think of Michael Jackson, and he had the glove on the one hand, and it's kind of cute. And then you were imagining what he was doing with the other hand,
Exactly.
which we later came to find out was not, anything.
If you see someone out in public wearing those little white gloves, call
they're
the cops.
probably weird. Yeah.
Yeah, call the cops. Something bad is going on.
All right, so that was number 3, and I believe you hit right. I mean, at the heart of everybody that would be a fan of Bury Your Bookie with number 2,
which is number 2, which is the dorks took over gambling in 2024. Like, gambling is broken for those of you who have not realized it yet, and there is no better evidence that how damaged our industry is than Dave and Buster's fucking legalized gambling on skee ball.
So you can get 1,000.
And we don't even know if they're betting money or they're betting for those goddamn tickets. We don't know if there's some little 14-year-old sipping on a smoothie, saving up for the boombox with a TV inside for 487,000 tickets that's been sitting on the counter of Dave and Buster's since 1988.
And it gets one of those Chinese handcuffs, where you stick your 2 fingers in there.
Right.
And pull them out. Yeah.
You go to that kid's house, and there are more pencil and eraser sets than you can possibly count, because that's how good he is at skee ball. And there's some other.
It is amazing when you go to the counter there, and like a Met bobblehead is 250,000 tickets. You're like, what?
Some other 8-year-old on Papa Shot cleaning people out because he's bouncing balls off the ceiling and right through the hoop. Some little sleaze bag over on air hockey. 14 years old with one of those candy cigarettes in his mouth, blowing up powdered sugar instead of smoke, taking your fucking money. Like, this is how you know the industry has bottomed out, is when the biggest bookie in town is the manager at fucking Dave and Buster's.
He just finished taking back the chicken tenders at the customer.
Yeah. When you go in to pay your guy on Tuesday and to pay him off, you have to order 87 orders of mozzarella sticks. The fucking industry's got problems. That's all I'm saying.
Some poison face at the cemetery Tuesday mornings at 10. This is.
Well, you remember when you were first getting into this and you were trying to find a bookie, and it was always some guy in the corner at some other gambling establishment where there's a track or highlight or whatever, and like half the people say, "Oh, be careful, he's propped up," or whatever else. And now the fucking guy is the guy who delivers the salami to Dave and Buster's.
You were just hoping that guy that you used to have to pay off would check out. And inevitably, there would be the phone call from some distant cousin who said, "I've taken all of Lefty's action."
Right.
And
now Lefty's action.
Have the balls to tell that guy to go fuck himself. That was always.
And now Lefty, the replacement action, is Emily, the waitress who's been at David Buster's for the last 15 years.
Just ask you if you wanted a side, a little shot,
right?
Cap off a margarita. Yeah. Exactly.
Like, honestly, how is every other, fast food crappy restaurant not why aren't we at Dairy Queen betting on peanut butter parfait?
Betting on the number of sprinkles on a chocolate.
Right, yeah. Like, I mean,
over under.
The industry is not in good shape.
No.
Dave and Buster's really showed us just what the bottom looks like. Like, when you've gotten to the point in your life where I got to get out. I need a bailout. I'm going to the skee ball machine.
Yeah.
You know,
That's when you know it's over.
right?
So over on the speaking of over on a game tonight. That would be your play, the Ohio State Texas game, and a slight lean towards Texas with the points in this one. Both of those teams more likely to go on and win the championship than Notre Dame would be, in your opinion.
Vastly more likely.
And of course, we have all of the NFL games. Do you like anything there? I know you're mostly a college guy, Professor, but anything stand out to you in the NFL games coming up over the weekend?
A couple of dogs. I do think with Zay Flowers looking like he's going to be out, that 9.5 might be a little too big in that Baltimore Pittsburgh game, because I think without Flowers,
Right.
that's going to be a tough number to cover. Houston catching points at home look like they're pretty live to me. And then I just don't have much faith in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Neither.
So I would sort of lean towards the Commanders and catching the points there. Other games, not really. I know a lot of people are plotting out the money line parlay and tying together the Ravens and the Bills and the Eagles. I don't know about the Eagles part of that equation. I think the Packers are a pretty tough matchup for them. So I'd be maybe a little
Going
cautious.
to play. I think he might have been cleared already. Not sure. There's like one more doctor that he has to see, and it really is. It's like having Lou Duva hold up two fingers in the corner, and you say they're 4, and he says, "Go ahead, kid, go get them."
I mean, with Philly laying 5, I assume Hurts playing is already built into that number. But like I said, I tread a little cautiously with that one, because I do think the Packers might be a rough matchup for the Eagles. But we shall see.
All right, Professor. Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for doing this. Always a lot of fun. Appreciate the big board. You had number 1 Aaron Rodgers, dumbest year.
Yeah, nobody's ever had a stupider year than Aaron Rodgers. It started with doing drugs in Mexico, because what's not a good idea about going to Mexico for drugs? Ran through the whole I'm going to be RFK Jr.'s vice president thing, and finished with let's get everybody fired at the Jets. So, nobody's ever had a dumber year than Aaron Rodgers.
No, that would have to definitely stand out. All right, Professor, thanks so much. We'll talk to you again here on Bury Your Bookie next week.
You have a great one, Steve.
All right, thanks a lot. The Professor, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, dorks have ruined gambling. I agree with him 1,000% on that. When you have to go down to Dave and Buster's and pay the juice on 372,000 tickets, which gets you nothing. I mean, is there anything more deflating as a parent than finding out that your kid is going to leave there in tears because you need to play, another $300 in skee ball to accumulate enough tickets to get him fucking anything from the prize desk? Haven't been in a long time. Used to be a big patron there when my son was younger, but that goes back like 30 years. I'm surprised they're still in existence, and an amazing phenomenon. All right, good luck with all of your wagers over the weekend. This game, a very tough figure tonight. Inclination last night was to take the points. For some reason, I may as well just get both of these wrong, because we did recommend that you go ahead and take a little bit of a taste of Penn State last night. And yet Ohio State playing so well with Texas last couple of games looking a little flat to me. But I'm thinking 6 points is a lot, but can they win this game by a touchdown? I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go against the grain here with the Professor and a lot of other smart bettors and just bury you with the chalk. So good luck with that. And good luck over the weekend. We'll talk to you again on Monday. Thanks so much for joining us here on today's edition for the people at nofilter.net and Bet Online and, of course, Greenlight Ventures. I'm Jeff DeForest. See you next time on the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.